We are exploring the 12 rising signs in astrology, and this video is about Gemini risings. So we're going to start by talking about the Gemini archetype and what it means to be embodying that energy on the first house. And then we'll go into an exploration of the Gemini rising chart, and we'll go through it house by house. Gemini is represented by the twins, that's their symbol, and we see this related back to the Gemini archetype in the way that we think about multitudes, multiplicities when it comes to Gemini. They're typically great at multitasking, they're great at holding multiple viewpoints or contradictions, they have a sort of multiplicity in the way that they think and move and operate. So the twins. All mutable signs have a double-bodied kind of vibe to them, but Gemini is the first one. I gave it away. Gemini is a mutable sign. That is its modality, and it is an air sign. That's its element. It is a diurnal expression of Mercury energy, which just basically means that it is an externalized expression of Mercury being its ruling planet. Typically speaking, Gemini is very versatile, quick-witted, fast, quick in general, like a fast talker, quickly changing their minds. This kind of speed is very important when we're thinking about Gemini. They can be pretty chatty, talkative, a little bit debate-y, particularly because they're so detail-oriented with that Mercury rulership. They can be great at explaining things. They can make great students and great teachers. Often they're doing both of those things at once. They're incredibly adaptable. This is going to come from the mutable thing, but also air. So they're flexible in a really big way, but that can also mean that they're quite flaky. Gemini can be really easily bored, but they're also very easily intrigued. And they're largely guided by their sense of curiosity. They have fast hands, and they can be people who talk with their hands because Gemini is the ruler of the hands. They are always thinking and they're always picking things up. They can be big overthinkers, but they're often just grabbing things, reflecting on them quickly, seeing if they relate to them, seeing if it's a piece of information they want to keep, and then they put it down and keep going. And this can make them kind of fickle. The jack of all trades is a stereotype that we often associate with Gemini, given that they like to pick up a bunch of things and they don't always like to go so deep with any of it. They can be a little bit tricky. Mercury is a trickster, and Gemini, I would argue, is the more tricky expression of Mercury rather than Virgo. They like to catch people off guard. They like to be unexpected in a certain kind of way. They can even be a little bit deceptive time to time because part of it is that they're changeable. They're going through a lot of phases. They're very innovative, and they're also great with words, and they make fantastic storytellers. So sometimes that can get all wrapped up and it can be a little bit misleading or misguiding. But largely, Geminis, again, are curious. That is like the thing that I would hammer down when it comes to the Gemini archetype. But that is just the first house. So let's look at a Gemini rising chart. So Gemini risings are embodying that energy when it comes to their personality, their relationship with their self-expression, their body, that kind of thing. But as we progress through the chart, we see that even though they get the reputation for being quite fickle and easily changeable, part of that is because they're actually deeply devoted to taking care of themselves. And we can see that with Cancer on the second house, right? So when it comes to meeting their needs, that is a deeply personal, private, and incredibly important process for them. And meeting their needs is going to allow them to express that Gemini energy in the way that their first house does, because they're being really responsible in a certain kind of way to giving themselves what they need, to actually caring for themselves and providing for themselves through a lens of caring and loving themselves. Then we see a Leo third house. So Gemini risings are going to really shine when it comes to being in small communities, being around those who are near and dear to them. And part of that is because Gemini energy is great at that one-on-one interaction level. It's great at picking up information. It's great at early schooling years. It's great at hanging out with friends and siblings and all of that stuff. And so this Leo third house is going to really show that Gemini risings can shine in this area of their lives. They can really be themselves and express authenticity when they're around people they trust, when they're around their near and dear, and when they're in circumstances that they know well, or where they're able to constantly learn more things, right? And then on the 4th house, we have Virgo. So Gemini risings are going to be very meticulous and very particular when it comes to their home environments. And so this might be because they felt like they grew up in a sort of critical environment where their energy or their use of their energy was constantly in check. But it also might just mean that this is an area of their life where they feel a desire to plan around. They want to feel a certain kind of stability. It's still a changeable stability because it's mutable earth. But Virgo in the 4th house is showing that Gemini risings are much more rooted than we initially think when we see them, right? With Libra on the 5th house, Gemini risings like to have fun, but they also like to have fun in a way that makes other people comfortable, right? So they might be really great at artistic projects with a Venusian sign on the 5th house, but also it's just they have a good time when other people are having a good time is the general vibe there. With Scorpio on the 6th house, Gemini risings are going to be very, very, very serious about their routines. This is part of what allows them to exist with the flexibility that they exist with because they go really deep and are very cautious, careful, and determined when it comes to figuring out what works for them on a daily basis. So while we might be prone to think of Gemini risings as really flaky and changeable, and we might assume that they're doing something different every day, chances are they actually have a really, I wouldn't say strict, but core routine that they like to stick to in order to feel their best and to express all of that energy that we see on the 1st house. With the Sagittarius 7th house, Gemini risings like adventurous partners. They like to be adventurous in their partnerships, and they like to be in one-on-one relationships that egg them on, help them to see a bigger picture, and help them get philosophical about things. Someone who they can debate and chat with and talk for long periods of time with could also be a part of this. But a big part of it is that it's filling out their perspective and giving them more information and fitting all of the things that they know into a bigger picture through engaging with another person. With Capricorn on the 8th house, Gemini risings are going to be very meticulous is a word, maybe a little bit transactional, honestly, when it comes to how they share energy with others, how they give and take in their relationships, how they handle contractual bonds, because there's a level here where they're not quite trusting. They're not really trusting other people in this wholehearted way, and they need to be very diligent when it comes to keeping track of what they owe to others and what others owe to them. With Aquarius on the 9th house, Gemini risings are, again, very curious. This is doubling down on the energy of there's always more to learn, there's always more to explore, and they like to learn and explore in very structured ways, and often in ways that go against the grain that society might expect from one or what people in their life might expect from them. With Pisces on the 10th house, Gemini risings want to affect change and have a lasting impact on the world in a way that is comforting to people, in a way that makes people feel safe and held and heard and known. It's really important to them that they get to do something that taps into this larger collective emotionality. They want to help people is kind of what it comes down to. With Aries on the 11th house, Gemini risings can be a little bit vocal, bold, maybe a little bit impulsive, but also fierce and very loyal when it comes to their larger groups, the groups that they belong to, their communities, and the way that they want to impact other people on a larger scale, right? So they can go out and meet new friends pretty easily in some regards. They might be impulsive to talk to new people, but also they're very passionate when it comes to who they consider to be theirs in a big picture of who are their people, who are not their people kind of thing. Warrior energy, willing to go hard for the people that they care about. And that can be not just their immediate circle, right? Because Leo on the 3rd is also willing to go hard for the people they love. This is more big picture relationships. And then finally, we have Taurus on the 12th house. So there is a way that Gemini risings are incredibly private about their inner workings, their internal lives, their relationships with their mental health. And they also might be pretty stubborn about the way that they approach themselves. And they might not really be willing to see new and flexible ways when it comes to how they handle their own psychology, their own inner workings. And they might be prone to isolation because they have this sign on their 12th house that might tell them that the only way to be safe is to be alone because you're the only person you can trust kind of energy. So Gemini risings might hide a lot behind, under the surface of that more bubbly energy. There might be a more still relationship with their internal world. Congratulations if you made it this far. Cancer rising is up next.